berets, and leather jackets may be the images you associate most with the Black Panther Party. But what you may not know is how the political group shifted healthcare in the US to be more community-based.
Our government was not going to provide healthcare, so we were going to provide healthcare for the people.
The Black Panthers opened 3 medical facilities, created the very first nationwide screening program for sickle cell anemia, a blood disorder, and they even helped establish a form of acupuncture that's still in use today.
We spent a lot more time serving the people than we did protesting or defending ourselves from the police.
So why isn't the Black Panthers' healthcare activism more widely known? Well, it may be by design.
History is written by the victors. The Black Panthers are not writing the history of the Black Panther Party.
Hey fam, I'm Imayan, and this Sunday on AJ Plus, we're exploring the Black Panther Party's history, healthcare legacy, and how a covert government program tried to bury it all. To understand what prompted the Black Panthers' foray into healthcare, you first have to understand why it came into existence. Here's how co-founder Huey P. Newton explained the group.
We are bound to transform society and erect a system where people will receive justice.
The Panthers formed on the heels of the Civil Rights Movement, a time when the push for racial equality and equity divided the U.S. 1965 was a pivotal year that helped spark the Panthers' creation, according to former Black Panther Billy Jennings.
You had the murder of Malcolm X in February. Also, you had the signing of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And also you had the Watts riot happen in August of 1965, along with the Selma March in 1965.
Then in the fall of 1966, a white police officer ran down and killed an unarmed teenager in a historically Black neighborhood in San Francisco. It was a breaking point. The community rioted. The governor declared a state of emergency, and the next day, National Guard soldiers marched with bayonets through the streets. This was the fertile ground in America's landscape that prompted Newton and Bobby Seale to found the Black Panthers Party for Self-Defense in October 1966. The Black Panthers' initial mission was to police the police. Panthers followed patrol vehicles ready to defend their communities with force if they felt the need arose. This is the part of their legacy that the world remembers. But the physical self-defense was a fraction of the Panthers' objectives. As their movement grew, so did their vision. Dr. Tolbert Small was a physician to the Black Panthers, though he wasn't a party member.
They were not just people in black jackets carrying guns. They were interested in actually doing something for the community.
The Black Panthers focused more on what they call survival programs, things like food assistance, free education, free legal aid. And one of their top priorities was free community health care.
Most of our civilized countries will provide these services for the people. The Panthers realized that we didn't have a civilized country. We were not providing these services for the people.
As a young doctor, Small treated political activists like Angela Davis and George Jackson in prison. And when Bobby Seale issued a directive for all chapters to establish free health clinics in 1970, the Black Panther Party turned to Dr. Small to help build the program.
I had all the pharmaceutical companies donating medicines to the George Jackson Free Clinic. I had doctors volunteering, nurses volunteering, med techs volunteering that.
Sheba Haven, who was a member of the Black Panther Party, says the Black Panthers' approach to healthcare was radical.
I think that they had a great impact on medicine in general because they were progressive, not just in the idea that healthcare is a right, but in the way that healthcare is delivered.
The Black Panther Party interceded in places where the U.S. government was seemingly absent, like its nationwide screening program for sickle cell disease. It was a first.
The government was not prioritizing sickle cell anemia for the same reason that Jackie Robinson had to be the first black baseball player in 1948. For the same reason that the black troops were segregated during World War II. There was racism in this country. Sickle cell anemia was a disease that affected mostly black folks.
Sickle cell is the single most common genetic disease in the United States, and the vast majority of patients are African American. It's painful and deadly, and in 1970, the country only allocated less than $100,000 in funding.
It spent $7.8 million on muscular dystrophy, $1.6 million on cystic fibrosis, $8 million to get a man on the moon. And obviously, sickle cell anemia was not a priority.
Then
Welcome to another episode of I Am the Revolution. I'm your host for today, CJ, Compton J, any of those will work. Welcome to the show. Already I got about 100 people watching. Welcome, everyone. The chat is already popping. What's up, everybody? Always say when I do these I Am Revolution streams, if you're here, this is where I feel these are the people to organize with, are the people that watch these I Am Revolution series. Now we do a whole lot of other content talking about electoral politics as a way of trying to shake people away from electoral politics and bring them over to more revolutionary thinking. So we do that content too, but we understand that content may have people that are Democrats, Republicans, conservatives, and not people who are beyond that and ready to organize and ready to build upon or build to a revolution. I feel like people who watch the I Am Revolution series are those people. So welcome, revolutionaries, to another episode of I Am the Revolution again. Today, we're talking about a couple of things with the Black Panthers, and it kind of evolved. So initially, I was going to talk about surviving capitalism pending a revolution. That was the main topic. And then saw a post or saw the article from Black Agenda Report about today's date being the anniversary 50 years of the break-in, the burglary that exposed COINTELPRO. So that was added. So we'll be talking about both of those. Started out with a video talking about one of the underrepresented things that the Black Panthers did, and that was survival programs, one of which was healthcare. Imagine that. Imagine an organization whose chapters are providing healthcare services. So we'll get back to that video and finish it out because we watched maybe half of it as part of the presentation, but we'll get back to that in just a little bit. Now, before, of course, we get into the bulk of today's stream, we do our announcements. Our Substack is here. You can join our Substack if you want to get notifications when we go live, when we do clips, and when our upcoming op-eds, when we do begin to do op-eds, you'll get notifications of that. Let's like this video. We got about 115 people watching. So let's say 100 likes. Can we do 100 likes with 115 people watching? So let's hit that like button. Also, 31,650 was yesterday. I haven't checked today, but 31,000, or maybe this was 2 days ago. 2 days ago, not yesterday. 31,650, and we'll see where it's at later today, maybe where the current count is, if it's different. YouTube memberships, we now have, it's been about a week and 2 days since we've had it. So about 9 days. We've had this membership. If you would like to check it out, please do. All the details is in, when you click join, it'll give you all the details. Here is our website, revolutionaryblackoutnetwork.com, and our contact information, info@revblacknetwork.com. All right, let's do one more check, and that is just to check the chat. I remember this well. This ranked right up there with Watergate and the boys from Brazil. this has to be the ultimate in exposing the deep state. It was definitely open. It has definitely opened up everyone's eyes. And let me make this bigger. That might help. Where am I? John is in the building. Then, good afternoon. What's up, everybody? Yeah, this should be interesting. So, this stuff, like, I have a lot of ideas to do, to do these. But to be quite honest, what's happening day to day with this administration, with the ruling class, with NATO, and with the pseudo left is just so much. I almost was like, when I saw some of the stuff that was coming out for today. So I'll cover that tomorrow, but because this is important also. Because it's important for us to understand that we need to take lessons from the Black Panthers, not only protest, not only the militant ideology, but things like their survival programs. And this is, we don't call it survival programs, but when we say you must first meet the needs, the material needs, you must first meet the material needs of people before they are able to organize and join a revolution. And that's what the Black Panthers so understood so deeply, that people can't even hear your radical message if their stomach is empty, if they have anxiety about paying the light bill, about paying rent, about keeping the job, about working 60 hours a week. So it's a very, very, I think I spelled that right, survival programs. It's very, very, it is a pillar when we're talking about the chair, or the table. It's one of the legs that props up the ability to have a revolution. So very, very important survival programs we'll be discussing. Let me look at some more comments here. I didn't go all the way down. 10 points program, yes. Anti-Nazi, white supremacists and the police. It was not a good look. Oops. Yeah, I've never tried to use it on a desktop. That's interesting, though. We should find out what that is, what's going on with the desktop use of those. This is great because I've been wanting to learn more about the Black Panthers. So that's awesome. And this is why we do these types of... the I Am Revolutionary series is our educational, radical educational series. So it may not be for beginners. I suggest anybody go watch this stuff if you want to learn, but I don't know if that you may want to ease into it, because some of the stuff may be radical if you're not, if you're brand new to sort of left politics. But if you're familiar with left politics, I don't think you'll have any issues. So you will be fine. All right, so let's get back to part of the conversation. And then another part that's very important to talk about, and that is March 8th, 1971. On this date, I always do that. One of the letters almost happens all the time. On this date, so what is that, 50 years? Is that 50 years? I don't know. On this date, I think I have the year right. I'll correct myself in a minute if I'm wrong. Was the break-in of FBI offices that uncovered COINTELPRO, and a lot, not just COINTELPRO, but a lot of other things that J. Edgar Hoover and the corruption of J. Edgar Hoover and how he was spying on everyday Americans, not just Black people. But some of the things that was discovered about the surveillance of Black people is astonishing. And I think this series could be listed under reasons why reparations are owed to Black people. Like the type of surveillance in order and disruptions of Black people trying to gain their rights by the government. So we'll be discussing that too, and that is, and that we have an article, and also, Democracy Now! Actually had the people who burglarized these FBI offices who weren't known for 40 years. People didn't know they burglarized it and then released these documents, these FBI documents that led to changes, reforms to the FBI and to the intelligence agencies, all from this. So we'll be also talking about that. It's escaping the burglary that exposed COINTELPRO. So we have a Black Agenda Report article we'll cover, along with a couple of quick videos on the COINTELPRO part, and then same with the survival program. So let's see. Let's start with the burglary, because that's the one I have set up already. So let's unshare here and get to. Let me make sure I'm on the right one. Yeah, it's so much to cover. It was time to do more than protest. That's not the right one. Okay, here we go. Yeah, so today it's the 52nd anniversary, I should say, now, because this is from 2021. So there is an article, but we're gonna watch the video that has some of the. I'll just let the video speak for itself, but let's watch.
Now, democracynow.org.
Oh, so that's where I stopped watching. So let's start over.
Together in small groups without masks era.
All right. So let's fast forward through some of the music and get to the beginning.
Fully reopen and lifting a statewide mask mandate.
All businesses of any type are allowed to open 100%.
Okay. She started talking, but this is a full thing. Hold on a second here. All right. Now I think we got past all of that. So we should be good. Because that's one of the guys. Okay, it's right after this. All right, so we're good.
We'll speak to a Texas doctor who's recovering from COVID. She's a long hauler. Then we'll look back at one of the most stunning acts of defiance of the Vietnam War era.
Let's break into an FBI office, get their files, and get what they're doing in their own handwriting.
50 years ago this week, 8 activists, including a cab driver, a daycare director, and 2 professors, broke into an FBI office in Media, Pennsylvania, and stole every document they found. The break-in exposed COINTELPRO, the FBI's secret counterintelligence program, which had targeted civil rights, Black Power, and anti-war groups. We'll speak to one of the burglars, Bonnie Raines, and Paul Coates, the pioneering Black publisher and bookseller in Baltimore, who was targeted by COINTELPRO. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the Quarantine Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention said Monday fully vaccinated people can safely gather together in small groups without masks.
I have a bunch of clips, so this is obviously not the one I thought it was.
Roy Blunt said Monday he'll not run.
Yeah, this is not. Hold on. Oh, sorry. This is the other one right here. Oh, my bad. No, it's here too. So let me just fast forward through. This is what happens when you don't have a producer here. Okay, so let's just go to the part where they have it. It's the last story. But listen to some of the information that was uncovered here. It is truly amazing. And here it starts here.
Breakaway by Tony Basil here on Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. 50 years ago this week, a group of activists staged one of the most stunning acts of defiance of the Vietnam War era. On March 8th, 1971, 8 activists, including a cab driver, a daycare director, 2 professors, broke into an FBI office in Media, Pennsylvania, and stole every document they found. They wanted to document how FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover was spying on citizens and actively suppressing dissent. The break-in occurred as much of the nation was fixated on a boxing match between Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier, which was billed as the fight of the century. The identity of the burglars would remain a mystery for over 40 years. Soon after stealing the documents, the activists, calling themselves the Citizens Commission to Investigate the FBI, began leaking shocking details about FBI abuses to the media. The documents exposed COINTELPRO, the FBI's secret counterintelligence program, a global, clandestine, unconstitutional practice of surveillance, infiltration, and disruption of groups engaged in protest, dissent, and social.
Sorry. Watch everything that moves in the ghetto. Wow. That's amazing. Now it's I don't want to tip off, but there's some interesting facts that came out about the number and the amount of Black people and the places Black people were being surveillanced that they had no idea. So it would expose a lot that was going on. But anyway, let's get back to the video before I keep talking.
Social change. Targets included the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, the Black Panthers, the American Indian Movement, the Young Lords, anti-war groups, Black booksellers, and other groups. The leaked documents triggered congressional investigations, increased oversight, and the eventual passage of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. The FBI never knew who was involved in the break-in until 2014, when several of the burglars made their identity public to coincide with the publication of The Burglary, a book by former Washington Post reporter Betty Metzger, who'd reported on the leaked documents back in '71. In 2014, Betty Metzger appeared on Democracy Now!
one of the things that I remember most from those files was the truly blanket surveillance of African American people that was described. It was in Philadelphia, but it also prescribed national programs. It was quite stunning. First, it described the surveillance. It took place in every place where people would gather: churches, classrooms, stores down the street, just everything. But it also specifically prescribed that every FBI agent was supposed to have an informer, just for the purpose of coming back every 2 weeks and talking to them about what they had observed about Black Americans. And in Washington, D.C. at the time, that was 6 informers for every FBI agent.
6 informers for every FBI agent. What do you think? What do you think this indicates, or indicated, since it's past tense? What do you think this indicated about the time, and even still now? To me, this obviously well, let me back it up a bit. What these masses of Black people do, or what did these masses of Black people do to warrant law enforcement to surveillance them? Like, were they committing some sort of crimes? Were they an organized sort of crime syndicate? No. To me, this indicates guilt. I've been fucking that motherfucker, these fucking people over for hundreds of years. And now they've gained their freedom through our system. So now I'm going to watch them like a hawk. Because I'm afraid. Because I know what I did to them. There is no other reason to surveillance. And to me, that's what I grasp is the number one thing. There's other things that I would grasp from this, but that's the top thing I grasp from this point. And I'm going to zoom it back a little bit because I do want to watch this again.
Stealing the documents, the activists, calling themselves the Citizens Commission to investigate the FBI, began leaking shocking details about FBI abuses to the media. The documents exposed COINTELPRO, the FBI's secret counterintelligence program, a global, clandestine, unconstitutional practice of surveillance, infiltration, and disruption of groups engaged in protest, dissent, and social change. Targets included the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, the Black Panthers, the American Indian Movement, the Young Lords, anti-war groups, Black booksellers, and other groups. The leaked documents triggered congressional investigations, increased oversight, and the eventual passage of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. The FBI never knew who was involved in the break-in until 2014, when several of the burglars made...
I got to check, make sure I was not muted. Let's see what's the name of those acts that were... Did I go back too far? Let's listen.
And disruption of groups engaged in protest.
What I want to hear is, what were the laws that were passed
Dissent and social change. Targets included the Reverend...
I don't know how I did that. Oh, I see how this thing rolls like this. All right, because I'm on their website. This is not YouTube, so I guess their thing rolls a little different. So I'll just let it play. But the point I was making, I wanted to hear what laws were passed subsequently because of this.
King, the Black Panthers, the American Indian Movement, the Young Lords, anti-war groups, Black booksellers, and other groups. The leaked documents triggered congressional investigations, increased oversight, and the eventual passage of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act.
The Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act is what was passed subsequently because, or at least the genesis of how that got rolling, is because of this burglary of the FBI offices in Pennsylvania that discovered these, what was happening here. So, as we always say, the FBI is here to spy on us. And the other stuff they do is just the second part. So abolishing them is quite a good thing. There is literally no use for them. There's just so many layers upon layers of police enforcement that overlap. But that's a conversation they're not ready to have.
The FBI never knew who was involved in the break-in until 2014, when several of the burglars made their identity public to coincide with the publication of The Burglary, a book by former Washington Post reporter Betty Metzger, who'd reported on the leaked documents back in '71. In 2014, Betty Metzger appeared on Democracy Now!
One of the things that I remember most from those files was the truly blanket surveillance of African American people that was described. It was in Philadelphia, but it also prescribed national programs. It was quite stunning. First, it described the surveillance. It took place in every place where people would gather.
This part, it was a part I described earlier about just stunning the surveillance of Black people. And like I said, it shows guilt. It indicates guilt.
Churches.
That these people must be planning to come fuck with us after the shit we did to them. You see how I went high pitch like that? But that's, to me, it shows a guilty conscience. That it's well, obviously these people are going to come after us after all of this stuff we did. So that's what's going on.
Classrooms, stores down the street, just everything. But it also specifically prescribed that every FBI agent was supposed to have an informer just for the purpose of coming back every 2 weeks. And
so basically to get a snitch. To have a snitch as like a regular contact, not a here and there, like a regular snitch to keep up with them, which is amazing. And that kind of leads to this comment. I hope you guys touch on how willing our own community was and is to work with. And I don't necessarily, I hate it because I hate sellouts, but this is what happens. They create a world of oppression. So people who are crabs who are trying to get out of a bucket, the ones that grab to the top of that, the top of the bucket where they can reach and get out, they don't give a fuck by that time. Now it's self-preservation. So this is why there has to be such a breaking up, such a magnifying glass on the Black community and any sort of social organizing to squash it in the Black community, because they don't want that shit to grow. But there's a lot of dynamics involved in this particular question. It's probably one that we should have a completely separate 2-hour session on, because there's a lot of different layers. Like I said, it'll be like, do you think during before 1864 here, were there any enslaved Africans who thought to themselves, I am trying to save my life only under these conditions? Fuck everybody else. I am trying to save me. Do we think there were any enslaved Africans who had that perspectives? Do we blame any enslaved Africans who had that opinion, considering the conditions? You get what I'm saying? So that's why I said there's layers of understanding. There's not an attack that we should be having for those people necessarily if they don't have power. Now, if you are a sellout and you are in power, you're on TV selling out, so you have influence, that's a completely different thing. I'm talking about regular people, the the informant, for example, not a famous person, not a person with clout, a regular person in the projects who just saying, this law enforcement, I ain't trying to go to jail, so I'm an informant. No, nobody likes that. But it's the condition that the person is put in. Not everybody can stand up to that and say, I'm going to push back against that. Not everybody has a spine like that, or the heart like that, or have a lived experience to where they can even grasp that their act of snitching is not just simply an act that's individual, and it's sort of tearing down that whole building up of a black coalition. So that was a long drawn out answer, but it's a good question. But that's definitely an entire stream. That's not a part of a stream. That's not a part of a stream. That's an entire stream, because it's so many layers of psychology that by now they've perfected. Like, do you think the FBI got better after this, even though they passed that act, or they just got more covert? You know what I mean? They're not leaving their shit in no Pennsylvania office anymore. That's all. They didn't change shit, in my opinion. So let's continue with this video.
Talking to them about what they had observed about Black Americans. And in Washington, D.C. at the time, that was 6 informers for every FBI agent informing on Black Americans. The surveillance was so enormous that it led various people, rather sedate people in editorial offices and Congress, to compare it to the Stasi, the dreaded secret police of East Germany.
3 of the burglars also appeared on Democracy Now!
She said that this surveillance of Black people nationwide was so big, writers were comparing it to the secret police. That is crazy to me. That's crazy. But then you ask the question, well, why haven't Black people progressed in the same way that other ethnicities? I don't know. But we do know, don't we?
Back in 2014, in one of their first joint interviews, Keith Forsyth served as designated lockpicker during the break-in. He hoped the break-in would speed the end of the Vietnam War.
War was escalating and not de-escalating. And I think what really pushed me over the edge was shortly after the invasion of Cambodia, there were 4 students killed at Kent State and 2 more killed at Jackson State. And I'm sorry, I think I'd have this down after all these years. And that really pushed me over the edge, that it was time to do more than just protest, than just march with a sign.
John Raines was another one of the burglars. At the time of the break-in, he was a professor of religion at Temple University.
The problem was J. Edgar Hoover was untouchable. He was a national icon. I mean, he had presidents who were afraid of him. The people that we elected to oversee J. Edgar Hoover's FBI were either enamored of him or terrified of him. Nobody was holding him accountable. And that meant that somebody had to get objective evidence of what his FBI was doing. And that led us to the idea that Bill Avedon suggested to us. Let's break into an FBI office, get their files, and get what they're doing in their own handwriting.
That was John Raines speaking on Democracy Now! In 2014. He died in 2017. Raines' wife, Bonnie Raines, also helped break into the FBI office in Media, Pennsylvania 50 years ago. At the time of the break-in, John and Bonnie had 3 young children. She's joining us now from her home in Philadelphia. We are also joined by Paul Coates, the founder and director of Black Classic Press and BCP Digital Printing. He's a former member and defense captain of the Black Panther Party in Baltimore. As a Black bookseller, he was targeted by the FBI as part of its COINTELPRO, its counterintelligence program. And yes, he is also the father of the acclaimed writer, Ta-Nehisi Coates. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Bonnie, you were the one who cased the joint. Is that right? Who went to these Media FBI offices, that's Media, Pennsylvania, beforehand to get a sense of the blueprints of the 2 rooms, whatever it was.
That's right. I mean, we had cased the exterior environment, so we knew what the police patrols were, but we had to get inside the offices to see whether there were alarm systems and to see what the layout of the offices were, where the doors were that we hoped we could get through. And so I had to call and say that I was a Swarthmore College student doing research on opportunities for women in the FBI, and I wondered if I could have an interview with the head of the office. And they very graciously gave me an appointment. And I showed up trying to look not at all like my usual identity. I disguised my appearance as much as I possibly could, but they were very gracious and gave me a half an hour or so. And that gave me the opportunity to get the layout of the office, to see that there were no alarms, to see that the file cabinets were not even locked, and to check out a second door that we might need to use to get through on the night of the burglary.
And Bonnie, you told Will Bunch at the Philadelphia Inquirer in a recent interview that 50 years ago we were criminals and now we're heroes. Could you talk about how your decision to get involved in this at the time? You were 29 years old, a mother of 3.
Well, my husband and I had been involved in the draft resistance movement, the so-called Catholic left, previously.
This lady, you would never think, you see her walking in the street with straight gangster at 29 years old with 3 kids, decided to do this. This radicalism, where is this radicalism? This is the point that I'm making here. Like, we need more people like this now. We absolutely need this energy right now. So shout out to her. Bonnie Raines.
Going into draft boards in the middle of the night and removing draft files to destroy the files and try to disrupt the draft system. So we like to say that we got our burglary skills from nuns and priests. But when all of the protests against the war in Vietnam were not making any difference, and
that's her. And her husband, who we saw in the previous shot, who had passed, I think, 4 years before this taping, because this taping is 2021, and he passed in 17. So yeah.
We realized that the government was lying to citizens about the war. We thought that we needed to take a different kind of.
So she was a war activist. So think about this, what she did and the type of activism that went on for the Vietnam War, and think about what's happening with Ukraine. And there is some people who are going out and doing protests, similar protests. But it feels like there needs to be another next step, the next level of anti-war protesting that needs to happen, similar to to reach any sort of level that was going on for the Vietnam War. Like a lot. We need to turn that shit up a lot.
Kind of step in civil disobedience and get proof to show what FBI agents were doing in the Philadelphia area things that were unconstitutional, immoral, and illegal. And the only way.
That's what I'm saying. Like, where are these people today? They're here. We need to bring them out. But this shit, they was not playing back then. I mean, just think about it. Martin Luther King. He was a Christian, or he was a Baptist minister. So a lot of these leaders, like Malcolm X, was into Islam. So religion doesn't make you not revolutionary. I mean, even the story of Jesus, whether you believe he's holy or not, but the story of Jesus, if he's a human, even if he was just human, inspired a lot of people. But anyway, so being revolutionary or even socialist doesn't bar you from being religious if you believe that. As we can see, but there was a lot more examples, it seems, in the 60s and 70s. So back to Bonnie.
To do that was to get our hands on documents. So that it seemed like a rational thing to do to get the truth out to the American public.
And I'd like to bring Paul Coates into the conversation and ask you, Paul, what, from your perspective, your involvement in the Black Panther Party at the time, what the group looked like, and what the impact of this break-in, these revelations about COINTELPRO had on you and your organization?
You know, the large impact, I think, at the time was we already knew that we were being infiltrated. We knew that provocateurs were all throughout. We knew that the FBI had us under constant surveillance. But I don't think anyone at the time really knew the full extent of the program, of COINTELPRO. We saw the surveillance, we saw the interference and the setups that were being done as acts that the government, as a broad government, was doing. But the break-in actually, I like to think of it as put flesh to the bones of what became known as COINTELPRO. And they did it in a way that, like, I guess like they intended to do. They did it with the FBI's own documents. They named people, they named places. And that documentation not only served us then, but the documentation serves us, it continues to serve us today. And I think that's the major impact. It made visible what we knew was there but could not really see.
I mean, in fact, this was the first time, wasn't it, that COINTELPRO was being made known, Bonnie, these documents that you were putting out everywhere. And then, Paul, this whole story of not only the FBI's war on the Black Power movement, but specifically, and this directly related to you, Black-owned bookstores, why they saw Black-owned bookstores like yours as such a target.
Yeah, this is true. I mean, I think a lot.
Black-owned bookstores. Does that ring a bell? What's happening with Black books now?
A lot of that comes out of certainly the FBI history and in following socialist groups and knowing that the bookstores were critical information centers, as they were in our community. And the store we established certainly was, because that was its intent. It was intended to be an information center, particularly for people, not just Panthers, but people who were incarcerated in jail, coming out of jail and becoming contributing members of the community. We felt we could do that with information. And certainly we came under a lot of pressure from the FBI, a lot of pressure from the state and the city at the time, who saw this, perceived this as a threat. The very thought that information, the very thought that knowledge could equip people to be better in their community and contributors in their community was a threat to them.
So Juan, at the beginning of this story,
so Juan was
we talked about the people who are targeted: Black
Hold on 1 second.
Panthers, anti-war movement, peace activists, and the Young Lords.
Young Lords. He was a member of the Young Lords, and he's going to go into that. But maybe we'll come back to that. But what I do want to go to now is to go to the accompanying article here that was just published. How comrades revealed the existence of COINTELPRO. And this is on Black Agenda Report, written by friend of the show, and she was just on Sabby's show last night. And you may have heard her talk about this. She wrote this, how comrades help reveal COINTELPRO. Actually, I didn't put it in the description box, so I shall put that in there right now. And I will also put in the description box the link to the video from Democracy Now! Because it's on their website. They may have it on YouTube, but I didn't get it from YouTube. But it's on their website. So you now have it in the description box if you want to go check it out on your own. So let's read a little bit of the article, and not the picture caption, but here. On March 8th, hang on a second, make sure everybody can see that nice and big. I'll go down here to make it even bigger. There we go. Let's make it even bigger here. So let's read a little bit of more detail here. On March 8th, 1971, a brave group of people revealed the existence of FBI spying, harassment, and even the killing of U.S. citizens. More than 50 years later, that's 52 years now, we would do well to remember the significance of their actions. And this is quote from the book, The Burglary. Quote, every field office was required to establish a racial squad to coordinate coverage of what the Bureau labeled racial matters. Ghetto informers were a subset of the group the Bureau called racial informants, end quote. I don't know how to get that other thing to go away, but anyway, let's do this. Make this a little bit smaller. There we go. On March 8, 1971, a group of 8 activists broke into the FBI office in Media, Pennsylvania, and removed every document they could find. Calling themselves the Citizens Commission to investigate the FBI, they knew there was FBI infiltration and disruption of the anti-war movement, and they were looking for proof to present to the public. They discovered far more than they anticipated. The burglars had all been politically active, and some participated in the theft of records from the draft board office, and that's another one. After planning for months, they successfully removed documents, copied them, and began sending them to newspapers to politicians who had liberal reputations. The New York Times and Los Angeles Times turned them over to the FBI. So did Senator Gregory. Gotta make it even smaller. Now I can see that. Sorry. So I'll continue. I'll start that sentence over. But the New York Times and Los Angeles Times turned them over to the FBI. So did Senator George McGovern and Congressional Black Caucus member Perel Mitchell. But the Washington Post did not, and began publishing the stolen material. Doesn't this sound very similar to Julian Assange? Isn't this very similar to Julian Assange? They said somebody stole the information and he published it. But the Washington Post did not and began publishing the stolen material. Other newspapers followed after the Post took the lead. 1 year after the burglary, NBC reporter Carl Stern came across one of the stolen documents with the word COINTELPRO written on it, but without an explanation of its meaning. He filed what became the first successful Freedom of Information Act lawsuits, and in 1973, this is 2 years after burglary, was able to report on the existence of the infamous counterintelligence program. And for those who don't know, that's what COINTELPRO is short for counterintelligence program. J. Edgar Hoover began COINTELPRO in 1956, intending to expose, disrupt, misdirect, discredit, or otherwise neutralize the activities of the Black nationalists. By 1971, the FBI had killed Fred Hampton and Mark Clark in Chicago. They had instigated disputes between the Black Panther Party and U.S. organizations, which resulted in the deaths of peoples like Al Prentice, Butchie Carter, and John Huggins in Los Angeles, and 3 more men in San Diego. FBI informants perjured themselves to send Geronimo Pratt to jail for 27 years. And Geronimo Pratt, they made a famous movie of him where Denzel Washington plays him. It's called Hurricane. The date, March 8th, is significant and should be celebrated for obvious reasons. It should also be remembered because the right wing has been ascendant in the intervening 50 years. Let me read that again. The date, March 8th, is a significant and should be celebrated for obvious reasons. It should also be remembered because the right wing has been ascendant in the intervening 50 years. So since this, the right wing has been ascending. The political duopoly is now a conservative monolith made up of far-right Republicans and center-right Democrats. Sometimes the Democrats' conservatism isn't even very centrist. The shift has created great confusion, and people who think of themselves as leftists recommend obedience to the covertly right-wing Democratic Party, and I'm going to say she's specifically referring to the Squad, AOC, Jamal Bowman, Ro Khanna, Pramila Jayapal, those types. The shift has created great confusion, and people who think of themselves as leftists, and those are the people I'm talking about, recommend obedience to the covertly right-wing Democratic Party, and even counsels making alliances with the self-proclaimed right. The burglars of 1971 made common cause with others in liberation movements and acted on their belief that the state's crime had to be exposed. That era is now nearly forgotten. After a decade-long plan to disappear what at the time were very common radical politics, millions of people protested against war, and many white people, like the FBI burglars, were true comrades who should not be described with the amorphous and now unserious term ally. I get what you're saying here. Because that word has lost sort of its meaning. Acknowledging their actions is very important, given that the U.S. is far more conservative now. In the throes of a neoliberal plutocracy, dangerous imperialism, and amnesia about what radical movements accomplished, 52 years after the burglary, the Washington Post is owned by Jeff Bezos. Ain't that something? The newspaper that was first to report this is now owned by the richest man in the world. The New York Times printed the Pentagon Papers, but now says nothing when proof of Biden's administration terror attack on the Nord Stream pipeline is revealed. Even if a group could successfully steal FBI documents today, there would probably be no major newspaper willing to touch the story. The discovery of COINTELPRO resulted in cosmetic change and a public relations effort to give the appearance that intelligence agencies would be controlled by Congress. A committee chaired by Senator Frank Church made headlines, but allowed the FBI to submit heavily redacted documents, some of which remain classified. The FBI is still infiltrating Black-led organizations, and whistleblowers like Edward Snowden live in exile. Julian Assange is fighting extradition to the U.S. Some political prisoners remain jailed after many decades. Black people are the main victims of FBI entrapment. These setbacks are reasons to remember the victories of the past. The burglars all managed to avoid arrest and cut off contact with one another for years in order to prevent one weak link from exposing them all. And they revealed their identities only after the statute of limitations of their crimes had passed. The commitment and discipline they exhibit are examples of how movement people ought to act and are lessons that must be remembered today. And that is absolutely spot on from Margaret Kimberly. The link is in the description if you want to go read the remaining part. It's not a whole lot left, but if you want to go read the remaining part, please do so. Very good article to accompany the video. I'll also kind of play a little bit of this because there is some good information and storytelling of this video that talks about it. It kind of puts a more somatic sort of feel to it. And then we'll get into the survival programs of the Black Panther Party. So let's, where was I here? Right. Yeah. Oh. Here.
It's the greatest heist you've never heard of, and one of the most important.
Last March, someone broke into the FBI offices in Media, Pennsylvania, stole some records, and mailed copies of them around to several newspapers.
Those records would help bring an end to J. Edgar Hoover's secret activities within the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
He ordered his agents not only to expose new left groups, but to take action against them to neutralize them.
Many Americans were tapped and bugged, had their mail opened by the CIA and the FBI.
The burglars were never caught, and the details have remained a mystery until now. A new book, The Burglary, reveals for the first time who did it, and how they used a crowbar to pry open one of the best kept and darkest secrets in American history.
We were early whistleblowers before whistleblowers were known as such.
The burglars are stepping out of the shadows just as new revelations about secret intelligence operations have many people asking, how much is too much when personal privacy is at stake? In the spring of 1970, the war in Vietnam was raging.
American battle deaths in Vietnam now number 40,142.
And at home, anti-war protesters and law enforcement officers were violently clashing.
It felt like a nightmare was unfolding. I took what was outrage.
There goes Bonnie.
Horror about what was going on, and I realized that I had to take it somewhere.
Bonnie Raines worked at a daycare center in Philadelphia. Her husband, John, taught religion at Temple University. They were the very picture of a golden couple.
He had an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 2-year-old. We were family folks who also wanted to keep another track active in our lives, which was political activism.
That activism attracted the attention of the FBI. Its director, the powerful and feared J. Edgar Hoover, perceived the anti-war movement, which ranged from radical revolutionaries to peaceful protesters, as a threat to national security.
At one rally, I had one of my children on my back, and not only did they take my picture, but they took her picture.
Protesters like the Rains became increasingly convinced the FBI was conducting a covert campaign against them, tapping their phones and infiltrating anti-war groups.
We knew the FBI was systematically trying to squash dissent, and dissent is the lifeblood of democracy.
Determined to get proof the FBI was crossing the line, fellow activist and Haverford physics professor William Davidon hatched a plan. He reached out to the Rains and
Dissent is the lifeblood of a democracy. Dissent is the lifeblood of the democracy. Now, square that with the intense suppression that's happening with dissent with the war. If dissent is the lifeblood of democracy and the ruling class is crushing dissent and has been for years, what does that tell you we don't have? A democracy.
and 6 others, including a social worker, a graduate student, and a taxi driver named Keith Forsyth.
We agreed to meet someplace where we could talk. And he says, what would you think about the idea of breaking into an FBI office? And I look at him and I'm like, you're serious, aren't you? I was pretty vehement in my opposition to the war, and I felt like marching up and down the street with a sign was not cutting it anymore. And it was like, okay, time to kick it up a notch.
The crew decided to break
I
into a small
feel like that's where we need to reach that point. Where not even protest is enough. So, and it may not be long off, considering the multipolar world that's coming, and any dip in the U.S. dollar being backed by Saudi oil, any dip in that, we're gonna see inflation in that. We are, and inflation on top of what already a very abusive, I would say, capitalist system. Those two could create the conditions for people to go, yeah, protesting is not enough. And I think that's the reason why they're so on surveilling us, because they're so afraid that what they're doing has to push people to the point of revolution. So let's continue.
FBI field office in Media, Pennsylvania.
Once I got over the shock of thinking that this was the nuttiest thing I'd ever heard in my life, I'm like, this is a great idea, because we're not going to make any allegations. We're going to take their own paperwork signed by their own people, including J. Edgar Hoover, and give it to the newspapers. So let's see you argue with that.
In the Rain's third-floor attic, the team divvied up responsibilities and assigned tasks. They hung maps to learn about the neighborhood, planned escape routes, and they took extensive notes on the comings and goings in the building.
I signed up for a correspondence course in locksmithing. That was my job, to get us in the door. Practice several times a week. After a month, you get pretty good.
Bonnie was assigned the job of going inside and casing the office.
I was to call the office and make an appointment as a Swarthmore student, doing research on opportunities for women in the FBI. So they gave me an appointment. I tried to disguise myself as best I could, and I went to say goodbye, and I acted confused about where the door was, and that gave me a chance then to check out both rooms and know where the file cabinets were.
Bonnie discovered there was no alarm system and no security guards. She also found a second door leading inside.
When she came back with that news, we became convinced, yes, I think we can get this done. We had more to lose than anybody else in the group because we had these kids.
We faced the reality of if we were arrested and on trial, we would be in prison for very many years. We had to make some plans for that.
With a solid understanding of how they would conduct the break-in, they now needed to figure out when.
March 8th, 1971, Fraser and Ali were fighting for the championship of the world.
You talk about a brilliant plan here. They got the locksmith. Go take some classes, get brushed up on your skill. They send her in a disguise to case the joint, find out shit is not locked. Then when's the best time? Fight night. And this is, you gotta understand, fight night is not like fight night now. Fight night back then, everybody's watching the fight. It's not like entertainment now, we got a million channels. It's literally, what, 7 channels at this point? One of which has the fight. Everybody's watching the fight, including the police. Brilliant plan.
And we had the feeling that maybe the cops might be a little bit distracted.
While the crew waited at a nearby hotel, Forsyth arrived at the office alone.
Pull up, walk up to the door, and one of the locks is a cylinder tumbler lock, not a pin tumbler lock. And I just about had a heart attack. Bottom line is I could not pick that lock.
They almost called it off, but that second door that Bonnie noticed gave them another chance.
At that point, you know that you're going to have to wing it. Knelt down on the floor, picked the lock in like 20 seconds. There was a deadbolt on the other side. I had a pry bar with me, a short crowbar. I put the bar in there and yanked that sucker. At one point, I heard a noise inside the office. And I'm like, are they in there waiting for me? Basically said to myself, there's only one way to find out. I'm going in.
Next, the inside crew walked into an empty office wearing business suits and carrying several suitcases. They cleaned out file cabinets and then made their way downstairs to the getaway car and drove off unnoticed. The group reconvened at a farmhouse an hour's drive away and started unpacking.
We were like, oh man, I can't believe this worked. We knew there was going to be some gold in there somewhere.
Each of the 8 of us were sorting files, and all of a sudden you'd hear one of them, oh, look at this one, look.
After several long nights digging for documents that looked the most revealing, the burglars sent copies to journalists, including Washington Post reporter Betty Metzger.
The cover letter was from the Citizens Commission to investigate the FBI. And the first file that I read was about a group of FBI agents who were told to enhance the paranoia in the anti-war movement and to create an atmosphere that there's an FBI agent behind every mailbox.
Attorney General John Mitchell asked the Post not to write about the stolen documents, saying it could endanger lives.
The Attorney General.
They do that now.
2 key editors.
They say stuff like that now.
Tried to convince them not to publish.
But the Post did publish the story on the front page. It was the first of several.
Yeah, they called and said don't publish the Hunter Biden story, and they said okay. That's the difference now.
And told how agents turned local police, letter carriers, and switchboard operators into informants.
There were very strong editorials calling for an investigation of the FBI.
Another stolen document would prove even more explosive. A routing slip marked with a mysterious word, COINTELPRO. While reporters tried to uncover its meaning, the FBI was desperate to find the burglars. The Bureau put nearly 200 agents on the investigation. Hoover's best lead was the college girl who had visited their office.
His command was find me that woman.
Agents actively searched for Bonnie, but there were many anti-war activists who fit her description.
We could hide within thousands of people. There were so many of us who were active.
The documents prove
2 years later, NBC reporter Carl Stern figured out the meaning of that word, COINTELPRO.
Secret FBI memos made public today show that the late J. Edgar Hoover ordered a nationwide campaign to disrupt the activities of the New Left without telling any of his superiors about it. Many of the techniques were clearly illegal. Burglaries, forged blackmail letters.
Do we think the FBI stopped doing this to the left? He said the left. Do we think the FBI has stopped this? It just came out they've been doing this with the BLM protests. A paid provocateur by the FBI. Like, this is their mandate. This is what they do. Let's listen.
Letters and threats of violence were used.
The FBI initially defended its actions.
The government would have been derelict in its duty had it not taken measures to protect the fabric of our society.
But the...
Doesn't that sound like an excuse they would give today? Always giving excuses, never fixing anything.
Bureau's techniques were worse, and the targets more far-reaching than the burglars ever imagined.
Diplomats, government employees, sports figures, socially prominent persons, senators, and congressmen. The FBI at one time sought to blackmail the late Martin Luther King into committing suicide.
Marriages were destroyed. Violence was encouraged. Many Americans were tapped and bugged, had their mail opened by the CIA and the FBI, and their tax returns used illegally.
All of this exposed by this burglary. All of this. Just amazing. And did our media, our government have the same reaction to Julian Assange? Did they go, let's investigate the all that? Do they do all of that in the same way? Did it have us change any way we do our military warfare?
Congress issued a series of reforms. When William Webster took over the FBI in 1978, his mandate was clear.
My primary focus was making clear that COINTELPRO was no longer one of the arrows in the quiver of the FBI, that we were out of that business forever.
Yeah,
Webster admits the Bureau's tactics were out of bounds, but does not condone what the activists did to reveal them.
You can say the information might be useful, but the method is hardly justifiable. There's a way to take on the unjust law.
You see,
in the courts.
You got to go orderly. Don't do this.
Things happening that were flat out wrong.
Go orderly. You see how civility doesn't work? Go orderly. Get this information through some other means 400 years after it happened. Or you can do it this way. And of course he's going to say, of course, breaking into the FBI office is peanuts to the information they got. Peanuts. If anything, they deserve medals of honor to me. So let's listen.
Treat your fellow man wrong. And we took a risk to try to do what we could to put a stop to it.
The burglars were never caught. 5 years later, with the statute of limitations running out, the FBI closed the case, unsolved.
On the very last memo where they say who they think broke into the media office, they're down to 7 people. Only one was, in fact, one of the media burglars.
For nearly 20 years, Betty Metzger had no idea who the burglars were until one night, an old acquaintance she was having dinner with let it slip.
And our youngest daughter, Mary, was there. I said, Mary, you really ought to know Betty, because she was the one that we sent all those documents to. And Betty's chin dropped like that.
I was absolutely stunned.
Metzger spent years tracking down the other burglars and getting them to reveal the secret they had vowed to keep forever. The mastermind, William Davidon, recently died, but he and 4 others are identified in Metzger's book, The Burglary, and in a new document.
And that's where we'll end it here. And so just a quick, you know, short segment, not even really a segment, an I Am the Revolution series and segment, I guess you can say, on how COINTELPRO was exposed. And now let's go to survival programs with the Black Panther Party. And one of their most widely known is probably groceries, giving out food and items like that. And if you watched our summit, General Strike Summit, we had an hour where we talked about the Black Panther Party's free lunch program and other programs they did. You may have seen this video, so it's about 2 minutes. Let's listen and watch.
Well, all these groceries, way over 6,000 bags of groceries, being given away free. Tomorrow night, the Black Panther Party has organized the whole conference, and tomorrow night at the Open Auditorium. That's when.
Actually, let's start over. That's 18 seconds. Because I want to make sure we hit that like button. 200. How many people we had? We've had over 500 people come through at some point. So let's target 250. Let's see if we're close to 250 likes here. Because I won't have any other intermissions. Just got one more segment here. So let's see where we're at. 225. So let's go to 250. So 250, we've had 563 people come through and watch us at some point. So let's shoot for 250. Thank you for those that have hit that like button. Here's our Substack if you want to know when we go live or when we drop clips. There will be a clip tonight that is going to be premiering. Make sure you check that out. And it's titled Third-Party Activists Need to Go. Third-Party Activists Need to Go Harder at the Pseudo Left. So make sure you check that clip out. Like the stream. And now let's go to survival programs. And Aaron, you can start it here if we cut this. Survival programs is something that's not talked about enough when we're talking about the Black Panthers. And like I stated earlier in the episode, meeting the material needs of people is step one in building a revolution, building a movement, meeting the material needs. And that's essentially what the survival programs were meant to do. One of the great survival programs they had was healthcare, or trying to build healthcare, offer healthcare at their different chapters. And free, we already know about the free lunch program, which spawned free lunch at all public schools. It came from the Black Panthers program. So survival programs with the Black Panthers. Now, I think I prefaced it enough. Here we go with the first of a few videos.
Well, all these groceries, way over 6,000 bags of groceries, being given away free. Tomorrow night, the Black Panther Party has organized the whole conference, and tomorrow night at the Open Auditorium. That's Wednesday, tomorrow night at 6 p.m. We expect way over 6,000 people to come down and get their free bags of groceries, and also to register to vote, to unify the vote around the very concrete program, so that in the future, the Black community and other poor oppressed people in any kind of vote will be unified around concrete survival programs like this, so that people won't be asked by the politicians to endorse them, but the politicians will have to endorse people's community survival program, such as free food, because people got to eat every day.
This is a new approach for the Black Panther Party, isn't it?
It's not per se a new approach. It's some new kind of work. It's all related to our original vision, though, of the Black Panther Party over 6 years ago. And the Black Panther Party organizing this kind of operation really shows that we're implementing the original vision of the Black Panther Party.
This is some of the work, or I mean, we've done, but this is something we would love to do more regularly once we get more financially able to with our community and all of you. As we build, the more we're able to do. But this is something we would love to do, to be able to give out, in a community, 200 in KC, 200 bags of groceries, 200 bags of groceries over here in Compton or Los Angeles or Long Beach, which is kind of the areas that I will be covering. Compton, Los Angeles, and Long Beach. So just understand this is something that RBN, the Revolutionary Blackout Network, aspires to do. Is this type of work that you see in this first video of survival programs, Black Panthers. Look at all those groceries there. Just amazing.
There are a lot of grocery items still to be put into these bags, the biggest one being a fresh chicken. That'll be put in at the last minute tomorrow. The Black Panthers estimate that the value of each of these grocery bags is in excess of $10. Ed Arno for Eyewitness News in Oakland.
It's a great video. Let's go to another. This one is Huey Newton with his fro, as you see in the thumbnail. If you saw the thumbnail, you see Huey Newton with his fro. But this is a video where you can see him talk about. I think this one is their community. Let's see what they call it. Oakland Community School interview. That's where he's at. Oakland Community School interview. And it starts off with this guy. You may recognize him, a young version of him. So let's listen.
Towards education. Perhaps some of you have already been in a number of different schools that had different approaches to teaching and learning. And then you've all probably heard about the one-room schoolhouses back in the old days when people like Abraham Lincoln went to school. Well, our first visit will be to California, where we'll go to the Oakland Community Learning Center. This is a school that was started by a political organization in the Black community of Oakland. Before you can really appreciate a visit to this school, you'll probably need some background information. Well, back in the 60s, a man named Huey Newton started a group called the Black Panthers. They were a very controversial outfit back then because they were critical of the way in which the local police behaved in their community. Many of their members, including Huey, were arrested, and some even served time in jail for their activities. Many people know of the Panthers because of their run-ins with the police, but there's another side to this organization. In Oakland, in many ways a poor community, the Panthers are also known for their projects like the breakfast program for school children and for the Community Learning Center. When we visited the center, we saw that they had a different approach to teaching and learning. We're going to be meeting a student at the Learning Center, a young lady named Kalita, and when the film opens, Kalita is interviewing Huey Newton, founder of the Black Panthers.
Where did you come from?
Well, I was born in Louisiana, in the South, in Monroe, Louisiana. And I came, my family came to Oakland when I was about 1.5. So I've been here about, 34 years. I'm 35 now. I'm an old man. But I went to about every school in Oakland. We moved a lot.
What was it like in your school?
We were being taught mostly about white people. We didn't have any books of our own. So it wasn't. We didn't feel that that the school was teaching us anything about ourselves. So it was a great problem in school for me and for the teachers. And that's why, as I grew older, I always felt that as I grew older and learned about our true history, that Africa, before its conquest, was a beautiful, cultured country. And we had great universities in Timbuktu. And I started to look at myself and get a new interest in education. And so that's one of the reasons that I'm so proud of your school.
My name is Kalita Smith. I'm 8.5 years old. I live in Oakland, California. I go to school at the Oakland Community Learning Center. My school was started by the Black Panther Party. The earliest age to start going to this school is when you're 2.
They're starting school at 2 at this Black Panther community school. Just amazing. So the Black Panthers started schools, started healthcare programs for free. This is free. Gave away food, also not just free lunch. They had groceries and food also, not just free lunch only. Just amazing what you can do directly with the same funds. So instead of donating to Marianne Williamson, who is out here trying to steal money and extract money from the working class, invest in programs and people who are doing work like this. Rome is literally renovating a building that was in terrible shape, and you should see some of the video now. You can go on his Twitter page and see it, or you can go on our Instagram. They recently uploaded a video to see sort of a before and after. But this is what you should be supporting your local unions and workers. Make sure you're tipping your servers who aren't getting paid a lot. We have to help each other in the working class. So let's get back to the video. Going on a tangent. Let's go.
We don't have grades in our school. We have levels.
Manzanas. ¿Te gustan manzanas?
They put us in different levels based on what we can do.
¿Te gusta? ¿Te gusta?
The schools, everything was a problem. For example, they used to serve cookies and I think graham crackers and milk in the morning to children in primary school who had the money to pay for it. And if you didn't have the money to pay for it, you had to put your head on the desk until the other kids finished eating.
How do you think that makes a kid feel?
At the Oakland Community School, everybody eats.
My school serves us breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
This school serves breakfast, lunch, and dinner. This is inspirational to RBN. This is the type of shit that we're aspiring to do. This is the type of shit that we need to do. Use our resources amongst ourselves, prop up each other, help each other. This school serves breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You know why? Because they know their parents aren't making much. Because they understand and have an analysis of Marx's analysis of capitalism. So this is very inspirational. Let's listen to a little more.
Because sometimes your mother or father or whoever you're living with probably don't have enough food for you. Some of the people who serve food are teachers. Yeah. First time I saw Huey is when we went to the San Francisco airport to see Huey come from Cuba. What do you like best about this school?
I like you best, and I like the children best because the children at the school are, I think it's fantastic. We weren't allowed to be free to be creative, and our curiosity was, and our questions about things were slowly discouraged. Whenever I asked a question in the class, if it was an intelligent question, the teacher would think I was just trying to be smart. And I would say, be quiet, or I'll go and sit in the corner. But the children in our school are free, and they ask all sort of questions, and they we try to give them an answer. But they teach us so much. I think that you teach us a lot because we need to know the things that you're thinking because you come up with fresh ideas, you see.
And I talked to your mother today. And Kalita, aren't you supposed to be at the Justice Court meeting? Well, you really have to remember the Justice Court meeting, okay? You should go up now.
Today, Carol sent me a letter about Sherry not doing her homework. The Justice Committee gives you a method correction if you don't do your homework in class.
The Justice Committee is made up of kids of their own peers. The Justice Committee is not some repressive organization meant to harm you. It's kids of your own peers who talk to you about whatever the issue is. This is a great thing.
You talk back to teachers or try to fight teachers. Then why don't you do your homework? I just forget about it. I lay it someplace and just forget about it and go on to other things. Why you do that? I don't know. You need a method of correction. I think she shouldn't have no TV when she go home, and she shouldn't have free time. I think the Justice Board treated Sherry okay because she needed a method correction, and a method correction from a teacher or somebody means they love you.
So you finished explaining to me why you can't do your homework. Well, I think that you ought to come to the Justice Court today at 3:30 and talk to Derek and Al about your problem. Remember,
This is freaking amazing here to see this. I do want to pivot to another video. We're staying on the same topic as far as survival programs, but there is another video I wanted to get to before I have to get out of here. And okay, so I know where I'm going. I had to think like, what else am I supposed to be doing here? Picking up the babies. So I said I was going to go back to this video. This is where we started with. Now, this is a video. This survival program is healthcare. So let's pick up. And now this is John Lennon and Yoko Ono. And I think they were some of the financial backers of the Black Panther Party. So again, remember, if you flash back to the beginning, this video is talking about this survival program they're talking about in this video is Black Panther Party healthcare, doing a healthcare program.
John Lennon invited Black Panther members and collaborators to appear on one of the most popular talk shows of the day, The Mike Douglas Show. And they seized the platform to address the problem of sickle cell disease.
We've tested 30,000 people in sickle cell anemia. I think we've tested more than anybody in the country.
And just like that, sickle cell became part of the national conversation. The Panthers use their medical infrastructure to run tests for sickle cell in cities all over the country. So it is objectively true that one of the defining public health initiatives of the early 1970s wasn't launched by the US government, but by an organized group of socialist advocates. The initiative gained so much momentum that President Nixon signed legislation to aid research on finding a cure for the disease. By this point, the Black Panthers had become a major cultural force operating on the international stage. Their philosophy shared common ground with Maoists in China. And as China began to normalize relations with the US, they invited Huey P. Newton to visit months before receiving President Nixon. And that visit was a major reason why acupuncture entered the American mainstream.
Acupuncture existed in the Chinese community already, but the Chinese community in America was more insular and more like an enclave, right? We introduced it to the rest of the world.
The year after Newton visited China, he sent a delegation of 19 people to the country, including Dr. Small.
When they came back from 1972, we started talking about acupuncture more. And we had people practicing acupuncture on both coasts.
The Black Panthers also helped run the first health clinic to implement 5-point ear acupuncture. That protocol is still used today to treat conditions like drug addiction and post-traumatic stress. So the group had a major influence on healthcare initiatives in the US. Why then does it seem like that narrative has been hidden? Why are the Panthers so often associated with this rather than this? It's partly because of controversial FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover and a little program you may have heard of before, COINTELPRO.
Well, one of the things that J. Hoover always talked about was Black people being unified, a messiah coming to unify Black people, which he was terrified of because he was a racist.
COINTELPRO, or Counterintelligence Program, was a propaganda and surveillance operation that the FBI used to target activists, political groups, and minorities.
COINTELPRO was basically designed to destroy members of the movement that they felt was a threat to the American government, the American way of life.
COINTELPRO's goal was to discredit leaders and divide movements, or as the FBI...
Now, I'm going to rewind for those that may have missed the beginning of this, because they do talk more about COINTELPRO, but we want to stick on topic. For this segment, we talked about COINTELPRO the last segment. So let's listen to a replay of the first minute or 2 minutes of this, so we can chop this segment up. So
It's maybe the images you associate most with the Black Panther Party, but what you may not know is how the political group shifted healthcare in the US to be more community-based.
Our government was not going to provide health care, so we were going to provide health care for the people.
The Black Panthers opened 3 medical facilities, created the very first nationwide screening program for sickle cell anemia, a blood disorder, and they even helped establish a form of acupuncture that's still in use today.
We spent a lot more time serving the people than we did protesting or defending ourselves from the police.
So why isn't the Black Panthers' healthcare activism more widely known? Well, it may be by design.
History is written by the victors. The Black Panthers are not writing the history of the Black Panther Party.
Hey fam, I'm Imayan, and this Sunday on AJ Plus, we're exploring the Black Panther Party's history, healthcare legacy, and how a covert government program tried to bury it all. To understand what prompted the Black Panthers' foray into healthcare, you first have to understand why it came into existence. Here's how co-founder Huey P. Newton explained the group.
We are bound to transform society and erect a system where people will receive justice.
The Panthers formed on the heels of the Civil Rights Movement, a time when the push for racial equality and equity divided the U.S. 1965 was a pivotal year that helped spark the Panthers' creation, according to former Black Panther Billy Jennings.
You had the murder of Malcolm X in February. Also, you had the the signing of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and also you had the Watts riot that happened in August of 1965, along with the Selma March in 1965.
Then, in the fall of 1966, a white police officer ran down and killed an unarmed teenager in a historically Black neighborhood in San Francisco. It was a breaking point. The community rioted. The governor declared a state of emergency, and the next day, National Guard soldiers marched with bayonets through the streets. This was the fertile ground in America's landscape that prompted Newton and Bobby Seale to found the Black Panthers Party for Self-Defense in October 1966. The Black Panthers' initial mission was to police the police. Panthers followed patrol vehicles ready to defend their communities with force if they felt the need arose. This is the part of their legacy that the world remembers. But the physical self-defense was a fraction of the Panthers' objectives. As their movement grew, so did their vision. Dr. Tolbert Small was a physician to the Black Panthers, though he wasn't a party member.
They were not just people in black jackets carrying guns. They were interested in actually doing something for the community.
The Black Panthers focused more on what they call survival programs, things like food assistance, free education, free legal aid. And one of their top priorities was free community health care.
Most of our civilized countries will provide these services for the people. The Panthers realized that we didn't have a civilized country. We were not providing these services for the people.
As a young doctor, Small treated political activists like Angela Davis and George Jackson in prison. And when Bobby Seale issued a directive for all chapters to establish free health clinics in 1970, the Black Panther Party turned to Dr. Small to help build the program.
I had all the pharmaceutical companies donating medicines to the...
I wonder if RBN could do something like that, a free healthcare clinic. Interesting. This will be something we would absolutely love to do if that's possible to do now. I don't know if there's any barriers, legal red tape now that was not established or erected at that time that could be now, but that's something we should look into.
George Jackson Free Clinic. I had doctors volunteering, nurses volunteering, med techs volunteering there.
Sheba Haven, who was a member of the Black Panther Party, says the Black Panthers' approach to healthcare was radical.
I think that they had a great impact on medicine in general because they were progressive, not just in the idea that healthcare is a right, but in the way that healthcare is delivered.
The Black Panther Party interceded in places where the U.S. government was seemingly absent, like its nationwide screening program for sickle cell disease. It was a first.
The government was not prioritizing sickle cell anemia for the same reason that Jackie Robinson had to be the first black baseball player in 1948. For the same reason that the black troops were segregated during World War II. There was racism in this country. Sickle cell
anemia is largely afflicts black people. It doesn't only afflict black people, but it's like vast majority, like in the 70 percentile or something like that. So yeah, so that was a great sort of stream, or this has been a great stream to sort of give a brief story. Of course, this does not touch upon all of the survival work that the Black Panthers did. That would require a dedicated series, and also the anniversary of the exposure of the FBI documents that included exposing COINTELPRO. So I think we can wrap it up there. I'm going to locate a outro video. I will go with this one, and this is Brianna Joy Gray asking Shama Sawant and Chris Hedges whether or not we should be running a left challenger to Joe Biden in 2024 in the Democratic Party or third party. Does it matter? And let's listen to their answers, and I'll rewind it.
Largely, they asked Jeff Weaver, Bernie Sanders' former presidential campaign manager, will there be a progressive challenger? And he said unequivocally yes. names that have been thrown around in the context of this article were Marianne Williamson and Nina Turner. AOC's former communications director, Corbin Trent, was quoted as saying about Biden, he's deeply unpopular, he's old as shit, he's largely been ineffective unless we're counting judges or whatever the hell inside baseball scorecard we're using. And I think he'll probably get demolished in the midterms. New poll numbers came out today showing new lows for Joe Biden. And people on the left aren't satisfied, I think, at this moment saying, oh gosh, Biden's not doing very well. They really want an opportunity to telegraph their discontent that is something other than staying at home, which can be construed as, you just are disaffected, you're just lazy, you're just sitting out, you are giving up your civic responsibility. And to that end, I wonder what you make about some of these options that have been floated as a third-party candidate. And do you think there will be, and should be a challenger, a progressive challenger, whether they run on the Democratic Party ticket or as a third party, to Joe Biden in 2024?
There absolutely should be a progressive challenger from the left in a militant campaign. I absolutely don't think it should be from the Democratic Party. And I do want to address the specific names that you brought up. But before doing that, I want to say it's much more about the strategy, the political strategy that we as working people use to bring a real challenge to the Democratic and Republican candidates. And the starting point, the ABCs of that strategy are you don't run as a Democrat. Because look at what they did to Bernie Sanders. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry of progressive Democrats supported Bernie in 2020. They were, when I went to the Tacoma Dome to speak at Bernie's rally, they were all there with me. I know these people. They don't support Bernie's politics, but they were there because it was so easy. There was nothing at stake to get on the Bernie bandwagon at that time, and yet then go ahead and support Biden once Bernie was crushed, because we all knew that was going to happen. The Democratic Party elite were going to use some trick or another to get Bernie off the books. And then you got James Clyburn, you got South Carolina, and lo and behold, it happened. We didn't know exactly how it would happen, but we knew it would happen. So the first obligation we have as people on the left, if we are serious organizers, if we have any loyalty to the working class, is to first be crystal clear about that. Whether it makes you popular or not, be crystal clear. The Democratic Party is not the way to go. And I don't want to hear